episode of Faith Infused Leadership. I'm your co-host, Meredith Banka, here with your host, Debbie Heiser, and she's the founder of Three Vines Consulting. How you doing today, Debbie?
I'm fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to this topic because we're going to delve into perspective and how that impacts us as leaders and how it impacts the people that we lead. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, perspective is so important for us to have. And so when you're thinking about perspective in relationship to leadership, tell me what you mean by that.
Well, so it's always complex, but not really, because it can be just that simple. That's my new mantra too. But when I look at leadership, it's so important as a leader to realize that there are different perspectives, and there's a ton of different entertainment movies out there that talk about different perspectives. But it's important for us to understand our perspective, but then also to understand other people's perspectives, the people that whatever's happening that we're leading will impact, whether it be a customer or a client, whether it be an employee, whether it be the product or, the marketing department, internal clients, whatever. But thinking about and understanding what that perspective is. And so a lot of times that causes us to step back and think about, as we make decisions, as we get ready to go do things, what might be missing. Mm-hmm. And to let other people's eyes on it, to say, who am I missing in this chain of things that this would impact? Too many times I've seen people make decisions about products or services or just about business in general based on their own limited perspective, and it creates chaos and frankly can kill some businesses if you're not careful.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can see how that happens. And it's, to me, I'm just thinking of the old adage, being in somebody else's shoes. Right. And isn't that what perspective is? So who, as a leader, who else's shoes should we be, stepping into to get those perspectives?
Yeah, that's a loaded question because there's a ton. It just depends on what you're doing. So for instance, if you're in sales, there's a quick and easy one that says you need to understand the perspective of the person you're selling to. If I'm leading a group of people into initiative, it's important that I understand the organization's perspective, what the leaders of the, I'm thinking back to like my Citibank times. And so understanding what the larger organization and leaders' perspective is, understanding the perspective of how it's going to impact the team of people that I'm leading, as well as the clients then that we serve. There's also times that I've seen where people have gone about making decisions, not thinking about how it will impact the environment, how it will impact the financial piece of it, how it will impact the culture of the organization. So it really, the reason I said it's complex is because it really depends on the initiative or what it is that you're doing. I think back to an initiative that JCPenney's did not long ago, where they said, you know what? We're going to try something completely different, and hats off to them for trying this. But unfortunately, they didn't understand the perspective of shoppers and the mental perspective of shoppers. And what I mean by that is, honestly, I'd much rather go in and just pay the price for something if I like it and pay the price and not have all these gimmicks and, how much is it going to be, so on and so forth. However, when I go into another department store, I know that the price tag is never really what the price is, which is somewhat brilliant because then I try it on and I really like it. And then I'm super excited when I get to the checkout and it's 20% off and it's cheaper than what I thought it was on the price tag, right? So mentally, even though I don't like to shop, I have this thing about, I'm saving money. So when JCPenney's came out and they said, we're just going to price everything at the lowest price that it can be. We're not going to run sales. We're not going to play these games anymore. What they didn't realize is that shoppers like to play the games. People that really like to shop like to get deals. And that's a big portion of their shoppers. And literally it almost took the company under. And I think they're still reeling from it. And so, it was a brilliant idea in theory. And when you think about it from a headspace, yeah, I totally don't want to play games. But then when I think about what does jazz me about going somewhere, look at this, this was $100 item and I've saved $25.
Sure. We've all gotten into that mentality of sale shopping, right?
Yeah.
Everything's on sale and we want to get a bargain and we want to get a deal and the 1 day sale and the 3 day sale. And what you're encouraging us to consider is that we can really learn by taking a minute and saying, if we make this choice, who is it going to impact and how are they going to feel about it? And how many times have you been in a situation where people are like, wow, I just missed that.
Yeah.
I just missed that. Well, I think what they really missed oftentimes is taking time to gain a perspective that would have helped them not miss it in the first place.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, I know, Meredith, you come from a marketing background. How many times did you do focus groups? But
constantly.
Absolutely. And so like in a new product development line or a new service development line, sometimes, you have the time to do that. Other times you're making decisions. You don't have time to do a formalized focus group. But the point is you still need to go do a focus group.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more of picking up the phone and calling someone in that department, or, calling someone that is a customer, or, having your team go out and reach out to 3 people that they know that's a customer to get their perspective. And that can be done very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get it too. I also worked for large organizations. Sometimes that's not as quick as what we want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But the point being is that reach out to people and understand that perspective, even if you don't have the formalized ability to do that.
And be open to what the perspective is going to tell you. It's not getting the perspective. I'm thinking of a time, you said focus group. I'm thinking of a time we did a focus group among a group of parents, and we asked them where they thought that they would be marketed for a certain product for their child. And hands down, across the US, the data came back exactly the same. They thought that they would be marketed to through the school. And the leadership of the company that I was working with was like, well, that's not how we're going to do it. We're going to do it to their home, not through the school. Even though everyone else in the space did it through the school. We thought we could be different and do it through the home. And, really interesting to consider, if you're going to get perspective, you must be willing to take it, even if it's in opposition of what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to the last podcast. So if you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend that you do, talking about change. Mm-hmm. And as a desire to be somebody that stands out and does something different than the normal businesses do, you're not only dealing with and sometimes it's great to be different because the need is there to be different. But if you're doing different just to be different, really step back and take a look at that, because you're also dealing with change. Mm-hmm. And how people react to change. And so there has to be some different implementation there than it does if there's change because there's a need for change. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we get these perspectives, right? We check in on them. We get the perspective that we have, and maybe our customers, maybe our team, maybe our leadership, our shareholders, our community, whomever it is. And we're willing to listen to all of that. What do we do when there's conflict in those perspectives?
Yeah, I forget who said this. It was either Edison, I think. No, who's the famous mystery writer? I'm so bad. Stephen King.
Stephen King, he's like a horror writer, yeah?
Yeah. So, horror mystery. I heard a quote of his one time that said, when I first have a manuscript, I ask 10 people to read the manuscript. If one person gives me a piece of feedback, I take a look at it and just go, that's interesting. If 8 people out of the 10 give me the same feedback, I know I need to change something. Mm-hmm. And so part of that is around looking at the theme and, massive amounts of perspective coming back the same versus just one, because sometimes you pivot for one and that's not what the mass is about. Mm-hmm. And that goes to kind of a theory or a theme when you look at the 4 stages of development and how people are. And it is important to look at that as a leader, to understand that about your people and also about the product you're in, the service you're in, the company you're in, the leadership that you're in, as well as those that lead you. But that first level is really more micro, and it's about you as a person. So if I've got a change coming up, or I've got a product that I'm getting ready to launch, how does that impact that individual customer that we're going out to? And then you go to the second phase, which is really then, I'm going to use in this frame kind of like that family or community, or if you're working in a business, it's your team or your organization. And organization means it's more than just your team, right? So it includes how that impacts internally other people within your organization. Then you move to the third, and that's really more about how does it reach the general population or those general clients that you have, and that's that thematic piece of it. Or in this case, it could even be your family, your community, your country, and then the global market if you're, there. And so the 4 levels would be different based on what you're doing, but ultimately the theme of that model is then globally, what's the impact and what's happening. And, even as we've just, hopefully as this comes out, been going through and hopefully on the tail end of the COVID-19, how does globally that impact us? And I want to take you back. I was watching something this morning that was talking about, there was a person talking to their past self, and they're like, make a Costco run, would you? And, then the past self was like, yeah, I think the thing that's going to mark 2020 were the big fires in Australia. And the future self is like, no, you have no idea what's coming. And I was thinking about that, and I thought, that wasn't that long ago. And that was devastating for the country of Australia. And so that was one view, but then all of a sudden now something has impacted the entire world. And so we've kind of forgotten about that, even though people are still dealing with the devastation of that. And so these worldviews can go, or these 4 levels and stages of development can go into multiple formats. Hopefully you understand what I mean when I talk about kind of the micro all the way up to the macro mundo and beyond.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're clear there. And I think you're also encouraging people to recognize that the perspective that we gain going through a situation gives us the opportunity to pivot permanently.
Yeah.
And so in particular right now, that's also a hot topic, right? Of what perspective have I gained? What has needed to shift? And out of that, how has my role as a leader improved? How's our product improved? How's our company improved? How have we served our customer better? What are we going to keep because we have this new perspective?
Yeah, I go back to your vision doesn't change, but how you get to that vision probably has changed or pivoted. A pivot's just more about the execution of where you go. And, looking at this, I'm really glad you brought that up, because one of the sayings that I learned from my good friend, Misty Springer, is slow down to speed up. And meaning that grounding, and I feel like the earth and everything around us is taking this collective breath. And, hopefully we won't ever have another time like this where everything has kind of come to a halt. And there are different types of stress with working at home and having children at home and trying to teach them too, and, not have them become zombies in front of screens, or, do family time differently. Everything is changing. And so, there has been an article floating around social media all over the place that really gives pause to think about, when we think about the hurry scurry of the world that we came from, and there are positive things that come out of chaos, there's also damage that, that's that law of polarity. But what are those things that going forward, normal is not going to be normal? What's the new normal? And so that's what I'd like to challenge people about with perspective is, what will your new normal be? What will your new perspective be? And how will you take that as a leader to help the folks that you're leading? Because we're all going through change. And so we immediately go through what's the loss. And then it's about, what am I gaining from this? And then it's not only about what am I gaining, but creating those, perspectives to be more global, and how that impacts globally what's occurring. And really, I go back to a core thing that I've talked about numerous times in these podcasts, is then standing in love about it and not in fear. Because when you make decisions based from fear, your perspective is based in a fear base. versus a love base. It's important to understand both perspectives and how you might be speaking with someone that's still in fear. And so how do we help them, you know, not necessarily come at them that they have to change their perspective, but it's how can I be of service to them where they're at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really looking at that from a heart-centered perspective rather than a transactional perspective, right? So when we check ourselves to check where we're coming from, what's that intention that we're bringing forward, I think is really, really important as well. So if someone wanted to learn a little bit more about the work that you do, Debbie, and where they could find you online or otherwise, what would be a great place for them to go?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook under Three Vines Consulting, or some iteration of 3V Consulting or Three Vines Consulting, depending on where you're looking. And then out on my website, I had a great website designer and someone that helped me with content to say some of the things, and did a beautiful job, I think, of articulating how I can help businesses and people that are wanting to start businesses. And you can find me there on www.3v, and that's spelled out, consulting.com. So hopefully I'll get a chance to talk with some folks soon, and feel free to sign up for a 30-minute power half an hour with me. So thank you so much, Meredith. I've appreciated it and enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. So for this episode of Faith Infused Leadership, I am your co-host, Meredith Benka, here with Debbie Heiser, and we will see you all the next time. Take care.